We were talking about, the last few weeks actually, we've been talking about folly. And we've been talking about, we talked about folly, and we talked about distractions. There's distraction is folly. We talked about selfish desires are folly. Last week we were talking about fear being folly. And of course last week we talked about those that they had overwhelming circumstances in their lives that took place. They moved forward, looking to the Lord, trusting the Lord. We had an example of Joseph, who was fearful to be sold as a slave, not knowing what was going to happen to him in his life. He looked to the Lord, and the Lord blessed through it and led him through it. We mentioned Moses, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. We had a whole list of them going, but we talked about. I believe we talked about how we need to trust Him more. We need to trust God and know that He'll deliver us through whatever fears we have. But if we don't move forward, doing what the Lord would have us to do and learn and grow in fearful times, well, we can lose out on the blessings and things that we can do for the Lord. When we think of our lives, when we go through life, we have, what are things that we could be fearful of in our lives? Well, as a young adult, maybe it could be your first job, You never know what that first job could be, working and being that witness for the Lord. And all that we do, we got to do it for the Lord, right? We think about, what are some other things? Well, picking a career, we think of jobs, and we think of picking a career could be a fearful thing. Think about committing to a relationship, whatever it would be. There's just certain things that as we go, but we need to commit to the Lord and look to Him for guidance, and look to Him to guide us through our future. We ought to seek the Lord and know and trust that He'll deliver us from all our fears, as the psalmist said in Psalms 34:4. Let's look at that real quick. Psalms 34:4.
Psalms 34:4. I sought the Lord and He heard me and delivered me from all my fears.
All right, so now we see here, but we have to seek the Lord in these things. We need to seek Him, trust Him, and boldly say that He's our helper. As we read also, I believe in Hebrews 13:6, we read that He's our helper and we will not fear what man shall do to us. And I think we were going to get ready to pick up with bitterness is folly. I think that's where we left off. Bitterness is folly. Well, how can bitterness be folly? Hey, how you doing, Morgan?
Good.
I can recognize you with your glasses off here.
I can't see you.
You want to clean mine while you're at it? It's amazing how dirty they get, isn't it?
I can.
All right, no, I'm teasing you. But thank you. All right, so how can bitterness be folly?
I waste a lot of time being bitter.
Yeah, you can waste a lot of time being bitter. Do we have reasons in our lives to be bitter? I can't remember. Now, last week I was asking my wife. I think last week I had some kind of assignment I gave you. Does anyone remember what that was? Oh, there you go. That's what it was. Okay, so think about. I said something about thinking about what are some things in life we can be bitter about. What are some things? What?
Rain days always make me so angry.
Rain days make you.
I know it doesn't bother you.
Oh, yeah.
It
Well,
rains
it
3-4
bothers me.
days in a row, and I know.
Well, that can make you a little upset in the sense that I ask Barb if I get bitter on rain days. Maybe I shouldn't, but I sometimes get in a panic because I know I'm going to fall behind on what I need to get accomplished. You know what I mean? But what are some things in life that can make us bitter?
Also, spouse.
That can make you bitter. Okay, what are some everyday things? Like a loss of a spouse.
Or it could be brother, sister, mom, whatever. Loss of like.
Yeah, you think of someone losing a spouse or someone close to them. It could
Or
be
even a child. Right?
losing a child can make you bitter. Yeah, it can make you bitter. Some people don't recover from that. Some people they become recluse or whatever. They don't. They really become sour, bitter to people, unsociable. So what are some other things? Now, the author of this book was a counselor. He has a whole list of stuff here, and I'm not going to read through them all, but I think we can pretty much start picking through some. I'll probably kind of pick and choose a few that he used, but what are some in his counseling, in his mentoring and talking to people? What are some things that might make him bitter? Maybe. Yeah, Jerry, you got a hand up. What do you got there?
I mean, somebody did you wrong, you're holding on forgiveness.
Oh man, someone now. If we were playing the couples game, I'd call my wife, or I asked my wife, and they said, if you could tell what your husband says he's bitter about, let's see if she can guess it. Oh, what is the thing that most bothers me that if I could go back and relive a moment of my life, I always said I'd redo it. Oh, put her on the spot. There's one account.
Going to your senior trip.
Aha, she nailed it. There's one account I had in my life that kind of made me bitter. I was on my senior trip and I got in trouble for laughing. And I just stayed in the chaperone's room. I didn't even do it. It wasn't even me that was doing it, but I was known to be kind of like the instigator, the kind of the clown, have fun kind of guy. And it was, and we were kind of laughing and joking. Good job, Bart. You got it. So, but I still to this day it bothers me. If I could go back and live a moment of my life, I'd probably said, okay, send me home, whatever. I would have not listened. I would have not slept in the guy's room. But hey, you know what? I shouldn't say that. But anyway, but it's a moment of my life that I have to turn it over though. I can't be bitter about it. Because if I'm bitter about it, that means I have harsh feelings maybe towards someone. That means maybe makes me oh, like I say, not a very fun person to be with when I start thinking about it, talking about it. All right, what else? So someone that done us wrong, or we feel someone done us wrong. Chris. The other Chris, Daniel.
Failure, you can be better towards yourself.
You could have messed up on something, failure, you can knock yourself down, keep saying, oh man, I can't believe you did that. First thing you know, you're not doing things, okay? You make a mistake, okay? All right, others. Ladies first, we'll say ladies first. There's a tie with the hands, but we'll ladies first.
Not getting what we want, but we see other people have that.
That's very good, yeah. Not being content with what maybe the Lord gave us, or not seeing what other people have. That grass greener on the other side of the fence thing, Yeah, we can be better about that. Keeping up with the Joneses, maybe, Okay, Matthew.
Sometimes you do something you're not necessarily supposed to do. Maybe it's not exactly wrong, but not right either. Someone confronts you about it, says,
Yeah, who are you
what
to
you
talk to me
done is-
about it, right?
Yeah.
Who are you to question what I'm doing? What?
That's a
Alright.
good one.
That's a good one.
I mean, especially when it is outright wrong.
Yeah. Someone confront you. This is gonna be a rough go here for me. I can tell. Okay, so we got we're not getting what we want. Someone questioning what we're up to or what we're doing. Loss of a child, loss of a spouse. Someone wronging you. Let me see here. He listed an account, believe it or not. He had an encounter. He was counseling someone, but his parents were actually upset with him because he wanted to serve the Lord. Imagine that. You could have he was upset because people were giving him a hard time for wanting to serve the Lord.
You see a lot of that.
Yeah. He chose to attend a Bible college instead of doing some secular job, and he was rejected by the family. And he had trouble with bitterness with the family for rejecting him to serve the Lord. Of course, we talked about the hurts in the marriage, things that could happen there. So, with each of these accounts and each of these things that could bring bitterness in our lives, there is no doubt hurt that has happened, right? We think about sometimes they can bring tears. Sometimes they can bring You talk about it, maybe you get a shaky voice, maybe you get, there's things that it affects you. It's real.
Sometimes bitterness starts in our own mind. Like,
Yeah.
it's not even the case that's going on around us, but our mind starts thinking it, and then we become bitter against someone with absolutely no cause, other than our own mind.
Yep. And they don't even know about it.
Right.
And that's a good point. That's a good point. We have a bitterness, and shucks, in God's word, what is the matter? If you have something against somebody, what are you supposed to do?
Go,
You're not supposed to think about it and dwell about it, and let it grow and get bigger and bigger. But you're supposed to go talk to them, right? And if you can't fix it, well, then go talk to someone else, or whatever, and get witnesses or whatever. But yeah, we're not supposed to kind of let that mind run with things, and sometimes our minds, they can run with things, and then we can get that bitterness, and we can get and it's really not even an issue, right?
Right, when you actually have that chance to talk with the person, they're like, I didn't mean that at all.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
I mean, so it's a good thing to talk to people. It's a good thing to not have that bitterness, because when you get bitterness, that bitterness does what? It gets smaller in time, right? It just kind of goes away by itself, right? No, bitterness doesn't. And that's what we're talking about, bitterness being folly. Because the end results of bitterness, if left unchecked and left to run on its own, will grow deeper and deeper. We talked about roots a while back in one of our studies, right? We talked about a root and what it does. What does that root do? Well, that root grows, and that root grows, it gets deeper, harder to pull, doesn't it? It gets harder to get rid of. That root gets bigger, and it gives more juice and more life to whatever it's feeding, right? And you need to get rid of it while you can. Otherwise, you have poison ivy all over the yard, right, Mom? Right? So that's one thing we got. I got some poison ivy I found at the property, and I got to spray it so we get rid of it. So I'm going to root it up. But anyway, but if we let it go and don't deal with it, then it gets bigger and bigger. It becomes a problem.
It's like rottenness in fruit too. Like I got a bunch of tomatoes the other day. It's a can, and if you let them sit too long, they're done.
Yeah.
Just that little spot will just keep growing and growing and growing.
Yeah, I know.
Nothing.
I know one thing with at the store at the time, like especially during fresh strawberries and fresh raspberries, you can't let them sit. We always had to move them. We used to sometimes repackage them. Like strawberries, if they just sit, they start to get smushy or whatever, they start to get bruised. And we would have to take them in other cards and we kind of roll them over, kind of keep moving the fruit, keep it fresh, keep it moving. But if you let it go, it goes downhill fast, right?
And that one rotten one affects the others.
And the one rotten one affects the others. You think about bitterness, and you think about if you're the rotten one that's bitter, you're going to affect others around you, aren't you? Yeah, you're going to take it out on others around you. And there's no doubt each one of us here has been hurt, right? And if you haven't, well, you're in the minority. Thank the Lord, because but it will happen. It will happen most likely. Oh, well, we think about we've been talking about culture, we've been talking about the world and the ways of the world around us, and we think about when it's adrift from biblical principles, there'll be big wounds that come along, right? There's going to be pains, there's going to be things that come along with it. And we think about bad decisions, and we can do things that are bad and have someone become bitter with us. But then we talked about how when hurt comes and bitterness comes, it hurts people around us. It affects our decisions and the things that we do. And is it needful that it does that? It's not necessary. It can be resolved. It can be reckless if you let it go, right? We think about kids, I suppose. You think about kids. We think about in split families. They had a study, and an article was written in the Reader's Digest about the long-term impact of youth in a divorced family. And when you think about it, there can be bitterness towards a parent or bitterness towards parents. Now, when there's bitterness and there's hurt, is it deserved? might have done something, but when there's bitterness and someone's bitter towards you, and maybe, like you said, you don't even know you did something or offended somebody, you know? It can be undeserved, it's not necessary. And it can go ahead and it can cause lots of problems in your life, and it can cause, if you let your mind run with it, it can get bigger and bigger. But what does it say in, let's look at Hebrews 12:11 through 16. And sometimes we've been in a situation, and sometimes we might have bitterness. Sometimes, but we need to look at it differently, and not look at it as bitter, but look at it. How can we grow from it? How can we overcome? How can we become better through somebody that's wronged us, or a situation in our lives that seems difficult, that we can have a bitterness towards. Hebrews 12:11 through 16.
Now no chastening for the present seemeth to be joyous, but grievous. Nevertheless, afterward it yieldeth the peaceable fruit of righteousness unto them which are exercised thereby. Wherefore lift up the hands which hang down, and the feeble knees, and make straight paths for your feet, lest that which is lame be turned out of the way, but let it rather be healed. Follow peace with all men and holiness, without which no man shall see the Lord. Looking diligently, lest any man fail of the grace of God, lest any root of bitterness springing up trouble you, and thereby many be defiled. Lest there be any fornication or profane person as Esau, who for one morsel of meat sold his brethren.
All right, so we can look at this and we can think about, well, maybe something happened. Maybe someone wronged you. Maybe someone did something. But if we look to the Lord in it and say, how can I learn from this? How can I turn this around? How can I grow from it? How can I get better from it? What can I gain out of this situation? Sometimes with pain can be a purpose. Sometimes with pain can be a positive. And I shouldn't even say sometimes, I should say all the time. Think about Joseph. Think about what he went through. He went through multiple situations, from being sold to slavery to, then, to the Potiphar and such, and then in the dungeon, or in jail, he was the keeper of the guard, or the keeper of the prison.
He could have been really bitter towards his brothers.
He could have really got bitter towards his brothers, but he looked at it as the purpose of God. And he looked at it as God had something for it. And with that attitude, he was blessed, and then he got knocked down again, and he was blessed. And then in the end, he was used in a mighty way of the Lord. And we think about, when we have bitterness and something happens and things happen, it may not be disciplinary, because like you did something, like in Joseph, or Job, think of what happened to Job. The Lord had a purpose. The Lord used him. And it wasn't because he did anything wrong. It wasn't disciplinary that way, but it was for a purpose of him to grow in his trust in the Lord, grow in his faith in the grace of the Lord. And we think about it, we should think about it, he's using us to develop us and to nurture us to a higher calling. It might be to help someone in the future. It might be to draw alongside someone and be a blessing to them. And as we see here, we think about it, it says in it to not let it get rooted, that root of bitterness spring up and trouble you, because it will cause trouble. It will not make your life easier or better. It will definitely cause you trouble. And you'll do things that you ought not do. You can offend people, and you cannot be that witness for the Lord that you ought to be. God has a desire for us to lead us, to guide us, to heal us, and to give us a peaceable fruit of righteousness. Desire has to have a peaceable fruit of righteousness. That sounds good, doesn't it? Peaceable fruit of righteousness. That sounds good. Think about that reward, right? Peaceable fruit of righteousness in our lives. And he says, lift up your hands and feeble knees, right? Don't give up, don't, there's hope in the horizon, right? We have to look at it that way. Yes, okay, it's a trial. Yes, it's, we could have bitterness. We could have something to hold against someone that wronged us, but we ought not do that. We ought to look to the Lord, knowing that there's hope in the horizon, that there's a purpose for what is going on. Because if we let it go, and it's folly, our bitterness can become folly. In the past, that whatever happened in the past might have hurt. It was real, but it's bad for your future if you hang on to it. If you let it fester, you let it grow inside you, and it can definitely have a great effect upon you. So the question here is: do you want to have bitterness of folly, or do you want to have that peaceful fruit? Do you want to? Do you truly want to have your wounds or your bitterness healed? You got to turn over to the Lord, look to the Lord, and how we can become better for it. Yes.
This is such an important thing, because like even as Christians, I think sometimes we're like, oh, I've dealt with that bitterness. I've forgiven that person, and we think that we have because we don't treat them differently, but like when we examine our hearts, we cling to those things still. And
Yeah.
I think there's work that has to be done if we're really gonna get rid of it, like really turn it over to the Lord. But like you gave your example, there's things that pop into my head
Oh, yeah.
that are old,
Yep.
but they must still be there if they pop into my head so quickly.
It was real.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And when it's real, and it's real in your life, like say, and we're going to go over some things in a minute here too as we go, is a daily thing. I mean, it could be it's a daily effort. You have to choose to do it. You have to choose to let it go. You have to choose to turn it over to the Lord. So yeah, we're going to go. We'll probably cover that some more when we go through. So one of the thoughts here we have the thought about bitterness is folly. I didn't really define bitterness. Let's go ahead and take a moment and define bitterness as we keep moving here. But so what is bitterness to you? What does that mean? When you think about bitterness is folly. What is bitterness?
Any angry feeling you have towards someone for
Okay.
wronging you?
Yep. We have here the thought of a sharp, unpleasant, painful or stinging sensation. It makes it difficult to accept or admit or bear something, and a strong animosity towards a person. That's kind of where you're at right there, that strong animosity. It's a hostility or a hatred that you have, a bitterness to someone because they wronged you or done something, or they kept something from you, or whatever it might be. So go ahead.
I've got an example. When I first moved down here, this person come up to me and said something, and I answered her and stuff, but later Dave told me he's never seen my voice so cold as it was then, and that was from years ago.
Just kind of rubbed you wrong, or what they said?
I don't know.
They
It
just
was
didn't have
just, and I didn't even know my tone of voice was different, but
Okay.
he said it was cold.
Icy daggers.
Yeah.
Well, I never did like her, but
Uh-oh, there's that bitterness right there. Come on.
I think bitterness too, it's not not a fleeting thing, it's an ongoing feeling.
Right.
It's, you know, it's not like, okay, somebody did something, made me mad, but I'm over it, you know, versus I'm still mad at them for what they did to me. You know?
Right. Shoot,
Bitterness can be like, even if someone hasn't necessarily wronged you,
Right.
you can still have that towards someone,
Yep.
even though they did nothing. Also, I feel like, even if it's not a wrong.
I was like me when I went into Art Van Furniture. I had a bitterness towards the salespeople because they stalked you, you know? I didn't do anything to them. They just kind of stalked you as you walked around the room.
I call them vultures.
Yeah. So, I mean, and like I say, it could be something maybe you just don't like. I mean, it's inside us. I mean, sometimes you just don't like someone. You just walk around and you just, for whatever reason, you don't maybe care for someone in the room. The way they looked at you, who knows what. But then if you dwell on that, you can see where that bitterness, it can cause problems. So it can be deep rooted. So
I think
So-
like even, Jesus even said if you hate
someone without cause, that's murder.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
that can be bitterness. We
Yeah.
hate someone, they didn't even do anything to us,
That'd be a good verse to
or
find.
even if someone you like, you have someone, a mutual friend, and they wronged your friend, now you don't
Yeah.
like them, even though they didn't do anything to you.
Right, yeah.
They've done nothing to you, you don't like them. You have bitterness.
Well, you have bitterness.
And
towards
Jesus
them,
defined
so-
it as murder.
Yeah, that'd be a good verse to find, if you can find that verse to go with it, that could be good, that'd go along with this. So, with the bitterness and having that hatred for people, or having that hatred for someone, or having that, that animosity towards someone, we're supposed to do, what are we supposed to try to do in our lives? We kinda covered it already, but,
Live
lessons
peaceably with
back.
all men.
Ha, Mom, you looked at my notes, she did. So A in your book is, A in your book is follow peace with all men. You got a desire to follow peace with all men. So, follow. What is it to follow? What is the idea of follow? I got that song. I will follow Jesus everywhere he goes. Anyway, so we got here follow. To follow is to go after. And here we have that thought of pursuing again. That flies, man, pursuing me, man. I thought I took a shower. I must not have used enough soap or something. I don't know. I got wax in my ears trying to land in my ears, man. But anyway, so we have here the thought about to pursue. When you pursue something, does that mean it's easy? Does that mean it's, does it mean it's, you don't have to take any effort or anything? If you pursue something, there's a lot of effort. You're chasing, you're going after it, you're having to do it. To move in the direction of. So if you're going to follow peace with all men, you have to move in that direction. It's a choice. You can start to be bitter. You can argue. You can be contentious. You can be what's the word I'm looking for? You can what's the word? You can be witty, a good comeback. Let people have it. Or you can follow a peaceable. The Proverbs is where, soft answer turns away wrath, but previous words do what? Stir up anger. So you got to make that choice. Which one are you going to do? You got to follow peace with all men. So it has the thought here now. What is peace? What is peace? Follow peace with all men. Peace has the thought of freedom from quarrels and disagreements. Now, does that mean, okay, you're talking to someone and they don't believe in God and they're mocking him? Does that mean you just stand there and you agree with them? No. But you're not going to sit and argue with them either. You're not going to, but there's freedom from quarrels and disagreements, harmonious relations. And if you have nothing in common, it's kind of hard to have a harmonious relation, but like I say, so harmonious relations, free from strife. It says we ought to follow, we ought to try, but it doesn't mean it's going to happen. There's got to be two willing parties here, but you have to do your part to try. Is all it means here. So we think about you've been hurt by someone. So whoever may have hurt you or offended you or done something wrong, what do you need to do?
Forgive them.
Forgive them. Whatever the odds are. I'm sorry, what?
Even if they don't ask.
Even if they don't ask. Yep. Whatever the odds are, whatever, you ought to try to make it right. I'm probably not going to go talk to the person that I did, but I need to give it up, right? But we have here the thought: does that mean they deserve it? Does that mean Does that mean they have to deserve to be forgiven? Oh, that's a scary thought. Because think about our own selves. Think about our situation. Serving a holy God. Do we deserve? Do we deserve forgiveness? But we're going to be going through some scriptures here, and that we need to forgive. Now, does that mean because you you forgave them? Maybe you had a quarrel with someone. Maybe does that mean they might forgive you? The other party might be just as offended as you are, possibly. But just because you forgive, does that mean you have to forgive them because they forgave you? And they might not forgive you. They might, but we have to try to follow peaceably with all men.
And I think we have to really ask the Lord to change our heart about it. Like we
Right.
can choose to forgive by not holding something against them, but in our heart, we might not let it show,
Right.
but we're
We
still
can mask it.
harboring them.
We can mask it, but is it still?
The Lord can take it away.
Take it away. Take it from me. That's good. Yeah. Pray to the Lord and ask the Lord, just take this away from me. take this animosity or take this, away from me, so I can truly give it up to you and truly get done with it. And again, they may not deserve it, maybe they're not sorry for it, they could care less they offended you or they did this to you, but that's not the issue. Them is not the issue. You can't control what other people do, but what? You're responsible to do what you can. We're responsible to do what we can or what we know is right. But at that point, if you don't give it up, you're the one. So if you want to see the Lord, experience His blessings, and if you want to have the healing touch of His heart, you have to do whatever's in your power to let go of the past, things of the past, make things right. Is forgiveness a feeling or an emotion? What is forgiveness?
Choice.
It's a choice. Is that choice now? That choice cannot be instantaneous. Or could it take time? It take a little time, right? Especially if it's really something that's really bothering you, right? And that's where like Sister Jen said, you need to the Lord and turn it over to the Lord, give it up to the Lord. Take this from me. But forgiveness isn't a feeling or an emotion, it's a daily choice. Over time, your choice to continually forgive will have a tremendous healing effect upon your own hurt. It'll help you to get rid of your own hurt. Let's take a look at Ephesians 4. I got some verses here. Let's look at, this is where we're at, is Ephesians 4, 31 and 32. Let's go to Ephesians 4. (31 and 32).
Let all bitterness and wrath and anger and glamour and evil speaking be put away from you with all malice. And be ye kind one to another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, even as God for Christ's sake has forgiven you.
All right, so what do we notice here? The one little three-letter word here. What do we see here? Oh. Did not just say let bitterness, right? Is there something you can leave out? I think I'll let this bitterness go, but this one I'm going to keep. No, it says all. So let all bitterness and wrath and anger, glamour, evil speaking put away. Yep.
Something that sticks out to me is evil speaking.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
guilty of, I think I've given it over, but then I talk about it again, and I talk about it again, and I talk about it again.
And what does that do when we do
It just stirs you up.
It stirs up your
to
emotions.
anger. It's so interesting,
Yeah.
all of these coming together, it's like, that's what it does, it stirs you up to bitterness, and then anger, and then unforgiveness.
It gets you all worked up. Yep, and get you all.
Yeah, that happens with, I've got a girlfriend from Oklahoma that her and I talk maybe once a week or whatever on the phone. And we start talking about things that happened in the past. And it does kind of stir you
Yeah.
up. It's hard to let the past go sometimes.
Yeah, it is. It has all malice, has a thought of wickedness, badness. But it says here to do what? What are we to be? Here's the choice we have to make. You got to be kind one to another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another. When we think about this, as God, for Christ's sake, has forgiven you. So, yeah, we'll go to some more verses here. Okay, now I can't turn a page. Okay, we're going to go with Mark 11:25. We'll take a look at Mark 11:25. We ought to forgive. And I say we ought to, it's a choice we have to make. And like I say, and if we start talking about it and we start dwelling on it again, and we made the wrong choice, haven't we? We've kind of opened the door again for that to kind of come back in. you know, you put a little sunlight on a grass seed or something like that, and once that root do, it takes off and grows again. We gotta be careful. Good point. But we have here, Mark 11:25.
Says, when you stand praying, forgive if you have aught against any, that your Father also, which is in heaven, may forgive you your trespasses.
So we think about, I don't know, I kind of thought about the example the Bible has about the fellow that he had debt to the king, and he asked the king for forgiveness because he was supposed to bring, they're supposed to bring his family and his kids, I believe, or whatever, for slaves or whatever, for time to pay off the debt. And the guy pleaded for mercy from the king, and what did the king do? He forgave, but that same person got out, found the one that owed him, and had debt to him, and he had him what? He had him thrown in jail. I mean, he had him, but the consequence in the end was, then the king said, you know, hey, you know, it wasn't right. So we need to be careful. We don't let things fester, let things grow. Think of how the Heavenly Father forgave us, even though not deserving, but we need to give forgiveness. Okay, how about another one? Now, of course, man, someone, they offended you. Maybe they offended you more than once, right? Well, they did it more than once. Thank you for you, right? There's a verse about this now. Everybody know where we're going with that one, but Luke 17:4. You know, even if they've offended you a few times, you better not have that, keep that bitterness and say, okay, there's no reason, because what does God's word say here? Where are we at? Luke 17:4.
And if he trespass against thee 7 times in a day, and 7 times in a day turn again to thee, saying, I repeat, thou shalt forgive him.
So even multiple times, we're supposed to continue to forgive. And there's no verse 7 times 7, I can't remember where it's at. But we ought to forgive. Okay, one more verse, Colossians 3:13. Colossians 3:13. Actually, 2 more verses. Colossians.
Colossians what?
Colossians, I had Colossians 3:13.
Forbearing one another and forgiving one another. If any man have a quarrel against you, even as Christ forgave you, so also do ye.
Okay, so forbearing one another. What is forbearing one another? What does that mean? What is that? Yeah, you got it. Yeah, put up with. To put up with, to bear it, to endure it, to suffer it. Just to kind of, let it go.
The 7 times 70 is Matthew 18, 21, and 22.
Oh, you want to read it if you're there?
Matthew what?
18, 21, and 22. It says, then came Peter to him and said, Lord, how often shall my brother sin against me, and I will forgive him? Till 7 times. Jesus said unto him, I say not unto thee, until 7 times, but until 70 times 7.
That's a large amount. So we ought to follow peaceably with all men, do everything we can in our part. Doesn't mean they're not going to reciprocate. Doesn't mean they're going to do that same thing. But we are to do what we're supposed to do. Let's do.
You think about that. It's kind of interesting, like, I don't think it's the number that he's talking about.
No.
I think it's like, how quick are we to give up on people? how quick, well, they said they wouldn't do that and they did it again. And then, you know, but maybe really deep down they're trying, you know what I mean? And they failed, you know, and it's like, that's a lot, like not to give up on people, not to think of ourselves even higher than we ought to, you know, because we can be right there in that same thing.
Yep. Yep.
I got Psalms 134.
What does it say?
Says, but there is forgiveness with thee, that thou mayest be feared.
Okay.
What was that now?
Psalms 34. Psalms 134.
132.
130 verse
Oh, 130, okay.
1.
Psalms. Let me get the, yeah, again, definitely, we need to forgive. One more is, we got Matthew 6:14. Let's go to Matthew 6:14. Matthew chapter 6, verse 14. Sister Jen.
But for you will forgive men their trespasses, your heavenly Father will also forgive you.
All right, we need to forgive. So we'll stop here. Next week we're gonna pick up with the next thought. Think about bitterness is folly, and we're to follow peace with all men. And next week we're gonna go over. We got to diligently choose God's grace.
God's what?
God's grace. Can we do this? Can you do this in your own mindset? Just forgive. Human flesh kind of wants to hold grudges, but we need to look to God's grace, choose God's grace, and apply it in our lives. All right. Let's see here. Daniel, you want to dismiss the prayer, please?